The next topic is autonomy, awareness, and action strategies. Implied in any consideration of the role of styles and strategies, especially in learning a second language, there are three closely connected concepts. One is autonomy, second is awareness, and the third is action. What do we mean by autonomy? Autonomy is providing a learner with complete freedom. Freedom to take charge of his or her learning. You make a learner autonomous. He or she should be able to be responsible for his or her learning. It's about having self-confidence, developing self-confidence, to be able to determine or select material for the learning, to be able to determine the pace of the learning. In fact, it's just about making a learner autonomous, where the teacher interference is very, very less, or you can say very minimum. Why is it so? Because the idea is to promote learner-centeredness teaching or learning process. Therefore, it is important that a learner should be autonomous, the learner should be independent, and should have maximum freedom to take care of his or her learning process. The second A, which is awareness. Awareness is a learner should be able to be aware of what is happening around him or her. It's seen that an autonomous learner is somebody who is aware of the situation, the content, the form of language to be used, and therefore this awareness adds to the autonomy of a learner. Now, based on the freedom, based on the awareness, the learner is more in a position to take an informed decisions. And these decisions or taking decisions are actually actions that are taken by an autonomous learner. So action, in order to have these kinds of action, you have to rely on the awareness, and awareness comes from having the freedom or autonomy. These three A's of learner development have taken on significance in recent years, especially when teachers are working on the development of learner-centered methodologies. Therefore, if you want to develop learner-centered, because autonomy revolves around learner, awareness involves around learner, and it is the learner who is ultimately in charge of the process, and the final decisions or actions, they also rest with the learner. So based on that, let's try to discuss each strategy separately and how they combined contribute in the learning styles and the learner-centeredness. Learner autonomy is the form or is the way of allowing learners to do things like initiate or take charge, initiate oral production, solve problems in small groups, practice language forms in pairs, and practice using the language outside the classroom, etc. The process of developing within learners a sense of autonomy requires the use and sometimes invention of strategies as proposed by Venden. So Venden was actually of the view that in order to develop the autonomy, the learner needs to be provided with, or something to do with the strategies, the learner should be provided with the complete autonomy to come up with the required strategies. With the aid of research on achieving autonomy, language programs and courses increasingly emphasize to students the importance of self-starting and of taking responsibility of one's own learning. Second point says, closely linked to the concept of autonomy is the demand on learners to become aware of their own processes of learning. Now, with the backdrop of a good deal of research, especially research on awareness and consciousness raising, language programs are offering more occasions for learners to develop a metacognitive awareness of their ongoing learning. In fact, a whole new journal which is known as Language Awareness has been devoted to the concept, and research findings are coming in. Lightborn and Spada, for example, showed that English learners in Quebec displayed no awareness of their own intuitions about language learning and suggested further attempts to help students to increase awareness. Now, the third point, what we are learning from these studies is that learners can indeed benefit from raised awareness of their own processes of learning. There is an optimal level of awareness, according to Spada, that serves learners. In other words, too much awareness, too much explicit focus on grammar, or too much devotion to rules coupled with not enough intuitive subconscious communication will smother learners' yearning to simply use language, unfettered by over-attention to correctness. Fourth point, awareness of learner or learner's predispositions, style, strengths and weaknesses determine strategies and their availability to them. Now, awareness without action will be relatively useless. Once learners can become aware of these predispositions and their styles, strengths, weaknesses, they are in a better position to take appropriate actions. So this takes us to the understanding of strategies, and that also point 5 about the strategies, that if styles are general characteristics that differentiate one individual from another, then strategies are those specific actions that we make on a given problem, and that vary considerably within each individual. As our knowledge of second language acquisition increased during 1970s, teachers and researchers came to realize that no single research finding and no single method of language teaching would usher in an era of universal success in teaching second language. We saw that certain learners seemed to be successful regardless of methods or techniques of teaching. So this is another finding that has been drawn from number of researches that have been conducted. But all in all, autonomy, awareness and action strategies are important in terms of developing clear understanding of learner-centered based teaching methodologies for teaching and learning. To conclude, autonomy, awareness and action strategies are key features of learning styles and abilities. Teachers need to be ever mindful of individual needs and variation, as well as the cultural context of learning.